Good evening. My name is Frank Klein, and I want to share some information with you about the situation in Hungary and Western Ukraine. I will give you a short history of the group that we work with, provide a brief description of the work they do, my family's involvement with them, and share about the oppression that they face. 50 years ago, during the waning years of the communist era in Hungary, there was a group of Methodist pastors who felt their denomination was accommodating the communist government too much. This conflict came to a head, and they were kicked out of the denomination. After years of struggle and many attempts to resolve the conflict, they formed their own denomination. Finally, in October of 1981, their new church, the Hungarian Evangelical Fellowship, or HEF, was recognized by the Hungarian government as an official church. The idea of separation of church and state in Hungary is not the same as what we recognize. In Hungary, the state supports the officially recognized church with tax funds. Furthermore, they contract with official churches, to accomplish certain social functions which are maintained by the church. The maintainers essentially serve as a conduit for the government funds. They oversee hiring appropriate personnel, leasing and maintaining facilities, and the day-to-day operations of the various institutions. The Hungarian Evangelical Fellowship maintains many different social institutions scattered across the country in this manner through their social arm called Oltalom, which translates roughly as care. These include residential settings for elder care, shelters for refugees and people experiencing homelessness and abuse. The HEF also maintains a variety of schools, including preschools, elementary schools, vocational schools, and a college. In general, it is the poorest of the poor and the refugee who are served by the HEF. In addition, without any government support, the HEF serves refugees. Currently, the focus is on the Ukrainians in both Hungary and in Western Ukraine who have been displaced by the war. These pictures show some of the treasures of darkness in Western Ukraine. In 1992, my parents, Bruce and Kay Klein, traveled to Hungary as part of a church delegation to visit the HEF leaders. That started a relationship that has lasted across 3 generations and 35 years. My parents lived in Hungary for about 10 months in the early 90s and made more than 40 trips to Hungary. My family and I visited for the first time in 2001. Since then, I've made more than 20 trips. I serve on the faculty senate of the John Wesley Theological College. The senate meets twice a year, and that's kind of my excuse for going. While I'm there, I meet with friends and colleagues as well as visit some of the institutions. Across the last 2 years, I've also had the privilege of making 2 trips into the Ukraine with HEF to encourage and support their work with people displaced by the war. Now I'd like to turn to the oppression that they're experiencing. In 2010, Fidesz, the political party in control of the parliament, removed the recognition of the HEF as an official church, and thus significantly reduced the amount of funds that they received for the first-class and effective social services that they've been providing. HEF sued the government, and they won, but the government still refused to pay all they owed. Well, things rolled along relatively quietly for several years, and then in 2022, the tax authorities raided the HEF offices and confiscated files and computers. And then, in the fall of 2023, the government withheld all funds for the services that they had contracted the HEF to perform. With almost no warning, the HEF was without funds to pay their teachers, their social workers, the elder care professionals, the shelter workers, the doctors, the nurses in their clinics, or any of their employees. Of course, many of the employees had to quit, and some institutions closed. Persecution ramped up even more. On February 20th, István Onodi, the CFO for the HEF, was arrested. Now, I've known István for years. He speaks English and has often been paired with me as a translator. He's a very thoughtful, a kind and gentle person. He's mild-mannered and a man of deep faith and integrity. At one point, István spent about 6 weeks in Seattle, and shortly after returning to Hungary, he married Ildikó Egot, and Rhonda and I were able to attend that wedding. István and Ildikó have 2 children. Erin is 11 and loves Legos and chocolate. Balint is a bright, inquisitive 8-year-old who loves maps, flags, and obscure facts about countries of the world. At 6 a.m. on February 20th, the police came to their house and arrested István. They searched the entire house and confiscated his computer, his phone, all the electronics they could find. They did let him get dressed, but took him away in handcuffs. This was done in front of his wife. Ildikó thinks the kids slept through most of it, but they probably saw their dad hauled up in handcuffs in a police car. They jailed him without charges for 30 days. After 30 days, he was charged and relieved. The trauma to his family has been significant. Of course, the HEF provided legal counsel and was as supportive as possible, but István's family lived through the trauma of the arrest and for 30 days didn't know when or even if István would be released. The HEF is in a very difficult situation. They're being persecuted by the government in ways that impact those that they serve and the very fabric of their service. Even in the midst of this oppression, though, there are treasures in the darkness. The educators who run the Mav Telep school have kept it open at great personal cost. They received only partial payment of their wages and most worked 2 jobs. This school is in one of the poorest areas of Budapest, and more than 95% of their students are Roma or Gypsy origin. This minority is one of the poorest groups in Hungary and are despised and suffer severe discrimination. These are pictures of Ukrainian refugees who also attend the Mav Telep school. This young boy is a refugee from Ukraine who has been in Hungary for a short time. He's fortunate to attend the 1st grade class in the Mav Telep school run by the HEF. As we observed this class, the teacher followed best practices for young kids, changing activities about every 5 minutes. He loved it and was very active in his participation. As Mimi and I left the class, we greeted each of the students, and when I came up to him, as I bent down to shake his hand, he reached up and touched the lapel pin I was wearing. This pin. It's a Ukrainian flag pin. And for a short moment, across generations, miles, social class, political borders, culture, and language, we connected. He knew that he was seen, and I knew that he had seen me. I never even learned his name, but we're connected. You don't know these people. They're many miles and time zones away, but in spite of that, you can connect with them too. Your donation can connect them to you in 2 ways. First, the funds provided will be used to carry out the hands-on work of the HEF to the poorest of the poor. It will help provide the support necessary for the Onodes to deal with the trauma of István's arrest. It will help schools and their institutions supporting Ukrainian refugees like this young boy. Second, and perhaps more important, it will signal to them they're not alone. It will signal that there are groups of people around the world who know their situation and who care. Whatever you can give will be appreciated and used well. Please give generously. You can make your checks to Klein One Foundation or use the QR code in the program to donate online. Thank you very much.